Hmm. Criterion Collection. Early John Huston. I think he had left Warner Brothers at this point, and then he had signed maybe a two-picture deal, I think, with MGM. I think these are the best type of John Huston films, is the crime films or the caper films, heist films, or just some movies where there's a set goal for the protagonists to fulfill. Um, and along that journey, it's kind of more about them finding themselves as people as they're trying to accomplish their goal. Quest films, I think they call it. Sterling Hayden is one of those actors, one of those character actors that a lot of people may not know today, but he's been in a lot of great films. Whether you want to say he was a big contributor to those films or just along for the ride, that's a matter of opinion. But he is an actor who very inconspicuously, when you look at his filmography, you're like, oh my God, he was in that and this and that. And it's these films add up. Just skimming his filmography right now, aside from the Asphalt Jungle, he was also in a lot of great film noirs that I like. But as far as like really popular films, um, Johnny Guitar, The Killing, of course, with Kubrick, a similar type film noir. Doctor Strangelove, again with Kubrick, The Godfather, The Long Goodbye. He was also in the Frank Sinatra movie as well, another quasi film noir crime film that was very popular. Crime Wave is another one that he did that I like, not a hugely popular film. Suddenly, that's another popular crime film. This film pretty much follows the caper formula that you find in most caper films. You kind of establish who the leader is. He's this criminal mastermind. Maybe this is going to be his last gig. You have other characters talk him up a little bit, usually people on the side of the law, and then scenes of him getting the gang together again. These were kind of cliched even when this movie was made, but they're still following the same formula for these movies today. It's not even a matter of like the formula, it's just a matter of execution of the formula. John Huston is one of my favorite all-time film directors. I haven't really analyzed a lot of his films yet. The only one I did so far, I think, was um, The Maltese Falcon, which great film. But I tend to find with his movies, it's not about like shot composition or um, things like that. It's mainly about characters and story, which makes sense because he's a writer by trade. But his stories and his characters are just top notch. And I loved all of his films with, or most of his films, I should say, with Humphrey Bogart. Funny enough, my first introduction to him is probably one of my least favorite films of his that I saw. He's one of these directors where at the time he was making film before the 50s. There was no TV, so they made a lot of films. So he probably had a lot of stinkers as well. But of the films I saw, one of the earliest films of his I saw that I could remember was the Humphrey Bogart film that was around the time when they had those 99-cent stores and a lot of the public domain films were just in those bins of DVDs for $1. And I forgot which Humphrey Bogart film it was, but it was Bogart was starring in it, written by Truman Capote, directed by John Huston. You'd think it'd be a great film. But I remember like hearing stories that there was a lot of fights behind the scenes with Huston and Bogart, and there was a lot of money invested, and the movie just completely tanked. Understandably so, because it was god awful. Um, I remember the name of it in a second, but yeah, despite that rough start, like most of his other films I saw, I either liked or loved. One of my favorite films of all time is The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Great, great, great film. And maybe one of my favorites of Houston's and one of my favorites of all time. Beat the Devil, That was the movie that was in the 99 cents bin. Beat the Devil. I saw it a few times because I owned it, which made it even worse. Is that it's not a good film that I watched several times. Here we're seeing what his weakness is, as most men, weakness of the flesh. I love the atmosphere of this place. You have a cat eating on the bar, guys reading magazines for free, store owner kicking out customers. Has a very seedy feel to it. This film is almost 2 hours, which is a little bit on the longer side for films of this era. Generally, films during the golden age of Hollywood before TV, this is, I guess, on the cusp of that, being around 1950. They generally didn't have a third act, so they wrapped up a little bit quicker, especially B movies and crime movies like this, which now it's looked at as a great movie, but at the time it was a B movie. They also tend to be on the shorter side, especially at Warner Brothers, where um, Huston came from. 60 minutes wouldn't be out of the norm. So this being almost 2 hours definitely gives him time to fully establish the characters. A lot of backstory. We know Dick's his weakness is gambling. We know Doc his weakness is women, and getting all this stuff established before the story really gets going really makes you more invested in the characters. I think again something you normally wouldn't have time for in these type of movies back then. Hayden definitely doesn't have huge range, but you can see why he works in movies like this. Good looking guy, tall, huge presence. His head is almost scraping the door frame as he walks out. Intimidating voice. There's a little thing here you're seeing, but it's definitely unusual for movies of this era. You kind of only saw stuff like that in, I guess, the method actors type movies, the Streetcar Named Desire and things like that, where you have her taking off her eyelash as she's crying. Just subtle things like that that we take for granted now, that really wasn't done back then. It makes it feel a little bit more real rather than just a glossy Hollywood film. It feels like you're watching real people that you might be more willing to invest in. Marilyn Monroe, very early Marilyn Monroe. This is more like of a cameo role, if I remember correctly. Not somewhat the range you would think would be in a film noir, Monroe. Definitely can't play a femme fatale. Well, she certainly looks the part. Uh-oh. I don't know if that character's gonna make it to the end. The minute the minute he started getting into show me big pictures, I don't feel confident he's making it to the end of this movie. Reminds me of like Heat and Across 110th Street. The minute you start sympathizing with a character early on, don't expect them to live at the end. Both like really great heist movies in their own right. Kissing scenes were so awkward back then. Not that they're great now, but I love this shot. Planning it out, smoky, small room, nice tight shot. Again, this is kind of a cliched scene back then, more cliched now. This was 73 years ago. And still, why change the formula? It's worked. Everything's kind of fully established. You establish all your characters, you establish the double cross coming, planning out the heist. Mm, the twist, he has a wife. The only real variable in these heist movies or caper movies is if the heist or the caper is going to be the climax of the film, or if it's going to be kind of like in the middle of the film, and then the climax is going to be the fallout of what happened. Because this is happening kind of in the middle of the movie, I think the climax is probably going to be the fallout of how this turns out, or unless they bring in a second caper in the movie as well. I did see this movie once before, but I barely remember any of it.
which is great because it feels almost like a new viewing. In all honesty, I could be wrong. I may never have seen this movie before because I don't remember anything about it. I just remember the general aspects of it, which is kind of who starred in it, who directed it. Because at the time, I think or I thought I saw this. It was around the time where I was first discovering film noirs, getting into the older vintage movies from classic Hollywood, from the 30s to the 50s. And there was a lot of movies I was watching at the time. I don't remember a lot of the movies I saw. A few stuck out. If I did see this definitely didn't stick out to me in any kind of a way because I don't remember a lot of I don't remember anything of what I've seen so far, honestly. Can't be one of these type of films if something doesn't go wrong. I saw that one coming, man. He started showing off those baby pictures. I knew he wasn't making it. Love the shadows. The lighting is great in this movie, even though the shots aren't super creative. Lighting is awesome. Something's gonna happen with that suitcase. I have a feeling Doc won't be leaving with it.
Well, everything go all right.
Funny, the door doesn't close.
Oh, this is
You
Fred.
heard the big slam sound effect,
Great
but
help to me on this
the
thing.
door swung back.
Follow me. Wouldn't be safe for you to carry that stuff around.
There's great tension in this scene, man. I love it.
So that might be the
I don't think they're gonna fall for it.
my house, you know.
It wouldn't play out this long if they were gonna fall for it.
Let's blow, Doc. Let's not fool around here any longer.
Be patient, Dix. This time I got us into the soul.
Be patient while you're bleeding out to death. Man, I've seen these movies where things go wrong, but things couldn't have gotten any worse. Two of them are shot, one's dead, the whole scheme's gone to hell. Half the money they thought they were going to get's gone. At most, they're going to get 25%. I just realized he was a hunchback. I'm an idiot. They were making some jokes, but I guess because it was understated, I kind of missed it in the dialogue. You know, you've got a good movie where you want the criminals to get away at the end because then you've made them three-dimensional and more relatable. And when you're viewing the cops as the bad guys, and I think you kind of did your job. And even though this guy's a scumbag, you kind of want to see him get away because, he admitted it, he broke down. If he didn't have that scene where you saw that he was a coward and he just gave up, and he's just not a complete sleazeball. He's just a weak man. You wouldn't care, but you kind of care. Kind of care a little bit. You kind of want him to see him get off. And they could have at least showed Marilyn on the other side of that phone conversation. It is really just a cameo for her in this movie. From one card game on the bed to another card game on the bed. I guess it's supposed to be parallels between the two of them.
How would you like to go there? All expenses paid.
Jesus. These guys can't catch a break. This is kind of a depressing movie because sometimes when these heist movies happen, you'll have like some highs for the criminals where it's like things go right to a certain extent, then they go wrong. These guys kind of just started off in a bad place and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. They went along with the heist because they needed the money, but they were never like in a good place where it's like they got the money and they enjoyed some of it, or before the heist you saw them like happy. Doc came out of prison. Dix owed a bunch of money for gambling. The hunchback was being mocked. The other guy that got shot was having issues with his kid being sick. Yeah, the other guy chasing Marilyn Monroe and he's completely broke. On and on and on and on. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Again, they could have shown us the scene with them and Marilyn. Damn. Him snapping. Interesting to see this character come back and play a prominent role at the end, considering he was just established at the beginning, didn't really see him much. Finally, another Marilyn scene. She's so beautiful. She's gonna flip so easily and so quickly. It really feels like he's gonna try and kill himself or something. Maybe death by cop. Suicide by cop, I think that's the term they use. when you cross the cop knowing you're gonna get shot. I'd be surprised if they don't imply that Marilyn's character goes to jail too, because that was the morals back then with these type of movies. Is everyone that broke the law had to suffer. When I think of like The Wire, one of my favorite TV shows that deals with criminals and cops, it was nuanced in that some of the criminals got away, some of the good guys won, some of the bad guys lost, some of the good guys lost, some of the bad guys won. It's very nuanced. But back then, when they were making these type of movies, all the bad guys had to lose, all the good guys had to win. I almost feel like he's gonna get away with it. Almost. I just have a feeling it
You've
won't.
been gone nearly 2 hours. What happened?
Dix, honey, how are you going to drive all
The
those?
thing with Sterling is that when he played cops or criminals, he kind of played them all the same way. His personality, his attitude was the exact same way when he played a good guy or a bad guy. Back to his weakness we saw early in the film, young women. That's a great shot. Creepy old guy, man. I love dark endings and I love bleak movies, but holy hell, this is bleak. And holy hell, this is dark. I mean, it certainly shows that crime doesn't pay, but my God. This feels like a tacked on ending.
Well,
The
gentlemen,
mandatory,
3 men are in
you have to
jail,
have a
3 men dead, one by his own hand.
anti-crime, anti-violence film
Say
after you watch the whole movie that was pro-violence and pro-criminals.
some ways he's the most dangerous of them all.
In the sense that it made you empathize with the criminals, not in that crime actually worked. I mean, what he's saying completely contradicts the characters. They are caring, they do have mercy. I mean, obviously, in the real world, you want these characters to all get what they have coming to them, which they do in the movie. But
Tell you, the black one's the bitch.
from a movie standpoint, when you're invested in these
Lady, all right.
characters, you want the best for them.
The blacks.
You want them to get over their flaws,
Pretty
because it's
brave.
not just about them being criminals or them trying to achieve the heist or the caper, but it's about them getting over their flaws as human beings. You see the good in them and you want that good to win out.
Dix, Dix. Oh, God. Oh, my God, Dix, Dix.
Man, that was a good one. That was a good one.